I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 9 years now. At first, it was perfect, fun, easy, the kind of love you think is unbreakable. She was beautiful, sharp-tongued, but funny, always quick with a snarky comment that somehow made me laugh even when I was pissed. We got married pretty young. I was 28, she was 26. We had our issues, sure, but nothing that seemed insurmountable. Lately, though, things started feeling different. Small things. Her phone always kept her busy. She dodged my questions about where she was going, and there were these weird late nights. I'd come home from work and find her on her phone, texting someone who she insisted was just a friend. She'd roll her eyes when I asked about it, say I was overthinking, that I was paranoid. But I wasn't stupid. I knew something was off. The first real sign was not something I saw directly, but something I noticed. Lisa had always been someone who liked her independence, but she started canceling plans last minute, claiming she was busy or tired, which wasn't like her. She'd get defensive when I pushed, and her eyes would dart around like she was hiding something. That, combined with her becoming more dismissive and snippy over little things, made me start feeling uneasy. Then, a few weeks ago, I decided to check her phone. I know what you're thinking, trust, right? But I'm not an idiot. I'd seen enough little clues to know she was hiding something. I didn't snoop in the typical way, but I did get access because she left her password app open one night. I wasn't planning on spying, just wanted to see if there was anything suspicious. That's when I saw the texts. They weren't exactly overt at first, just little flirtatious comments, inside jokes, secret emojis. But then I saw the name she kept referencing, Jake. That's when it hit me. Jake was someone I'd never heard her mention before, but according to her messages, they had been talking for months. The tone was flirty, even intimate at times. She called him babe, told him she was so tired of pretending and wanted something more. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I kept reading, trying to make sense of it all. The messages weren't just innocent banter. She was planning to meet him up on that hiking trip we'd been planning for weeks. She was supposed to go alone, just a weekend getaway for herself to clear her head. But her app history told a different story. There was a trail she'd gone on, but it was more than just her solo hike. It was the rendezvous point where she and Jake had met up. The app logs showed a stop at her favorite lookout, the one she'd mentioned she'd be alone at, and then a mysterious meeting in the woods. I could see in her location history that she'd turned off her GPS after that point, but the trail was clear she'd been there with him. That's when I started to put it all together. She lied about the hike. She lied about being lost when her phone's emergency services had been called that morning. The rescue operation was huge. It cost taxpayers thousands, and all for what? To cover her lies, to hide her affair. My chest was tight just thinking about it. That rescue was a farce, a stunt to make her look innocent. She'd been lost in the woods, but she'd been with Jake all along. I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't believe it. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had been sneaking around behind my back, planning secret meetings, lying about her whereabouts, all while pretending to be the devoted wife. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to ask her why she did it. But I knew I had to confront her first. I needed to hear her side, see how she'd spin it. Because I knew there'd be some bullshit excuse coming. She always had a way of twisting everything to make herself the victim. That's where I am now, sitting here with her lying across the room, acting like nothing's wrong while I'm burning inside. I can't process how she could be so callous, so manipulative. I keep replaying those messages in my head. The way she called him babe. The way she planned to meet him in the woods while I was out of town. It's like my entire life is collapsing around me, and I don't even know how to begin to fix it, or whether I should. All I know is, I'm furious, betrayed, and lost in a way I never expected to be. The confrontation came sooner than I expected, probably because I couldn't keep this secret hidden for much longer. One night I decided I'd had enough of pretending everything was fine. I waited until she was in the kitchen, mindlessly flipping through her phone. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, then just blurted out, "Lisa, I know what you've been doing. I know about Jake." She froze for a second, then turned around with that fake, bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was in control. "What are you talking about, Mike? You're imagining things." Her voice was sharp, defensive. She was good at pretending innocence, but I'd seen through her act enough times to know she was lying. "No, Lisa," I said, voice shaking. "I saw the messages, the trail logs, the emergency call. You were with him. You're cheating on me. How long has this been going on?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I spent a weekend away. It's nothing. You're overthinking as usual." But her voice cracked. Just a little, and I caught the faint tremor in her hands. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. The texts I'd saved, the timestamps, the location history. Her face turned pale for a second, then she scoffed. "That's bullshit. Someone must have hacked my account. I don't know what you think you saw, but I swear it's all a mistake." The way she said mistake made my blood boil. She was lying through her teeth, and I could see it in her eyes. She was trying to spin some story to convince herself as much as me. But I wasn't buying it. I kept pressing, demanding answers, asking her how long she'd been cheating, why she'd lied about the hike, why she'd risked everything for some guy she barely knew. Her response was a shitstorm. She started crying, telling me I was crazy, that I was accusing her of something she hadn't done. She called me paranoid, said I was controlling, and that I was the one who was always accusing her. "You don't understand, Mike," she said, voice trembling. "Jake makes me feel alive. He's different from you. You're so dull these days. I needed something exciting, okay?" That hurt more than anything. That she'd say I was dull, that I wasn't enough, that she'd cheat just to feel something. It was like a slap to the face, but what hurt even worse was seeing her lying so blatantly, trying to gaslight me into believing her bullshit. I felt my hands tighten into fists. I wanted to hit something, scream at her for being so manipulative, so reckless. But I held back, instead just staring at her with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. I knew I wasn't going to get the truth out of her that night. She was too good at hiding her tracks, too skilled at lying. All I knew was that I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to decide what to do next. This wasn't just about a fling anymore. It was about trust, respect, everything I thought our marriage was built on. And I realized I had a choice. Either fight for this, knowing the truth, or walk away and try to pick up the pieces of what was left. The emotional roller coaster hit me hard that night. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and more alone than I ever had. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been sneaking around behind my back, and I just found out in the most humiliating way possible. I kept replaying the moments in my mind, her sneering, her excuses, her crying, and wondered how I could ever trust her again. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to figure out whether I was going to forgive her, confront her further, or just walk away from everything we'd built. Part of me wanted to believe her lies, to pretend I hadn't seen the proof. But deep down, I knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. There was no way she'd been honest about everything. And somehow I suspected she hadn't just been cheating on me with Jake. If she'd lied so easily about that, what else was she hiding? The whole thing made me feel sick, like I'd been played for a fool and now I'd have to pay the price. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't look at Lisa the same way anymore. Her tears and lies felt like a sick joke. The betrayal had cut so deep that I started questioning whether I even knew her at all. I stayed up late, pacing around the apartment, my mind racing through every moment, every conversation, every sign I had missed. How had I been so blind? How could she think she could get away with it? The next morning, I woke up feeling numb but determined. I knew I couldn't just let this slide. I decided I needed a plan, a way to find out just how far she'd gone and whether she was really done hiding things from me. That's when I started digging into her phone again, not just looking at her messages but also her apps, her location history, and her social media. I had to be sure I wasn't missing anything. I discovered something even more shocking. Besides Jake's messages, I found a lot of other evidence: deleted chats, secret notes, and even photos of her with someone else, taken over the past few weeks. She'd been sneaking around with multiple people, not just Jake. She'd been living a double life, hiding her tracks meticulously. It was like I'd uncovered a completely different woman, someone selfish, manipulative, and willing to cheat just for some fleeting thrill. But what threw me for a loop was the revelation that she had planned her entire lost in the woods story in advance. The night she supposedly got lost, She'd actually been with Jake, parked in a secluded area close to the hiking trail. I found GPS logs that confirmed she'd been there, right before the emergency call was made. The whole rescue operation was a sham, a cover-up to make her look innocent. The taxpayers paid thousands for a fake accident. My stomach twisted at the thought. She had staged her own disappearance. She used the rescue as an alibi, a way to throw me off, to make everyone believe she was just a woman in trouble. I felt this incredible mixture of anger and disgust. How could she be so calculated, so cold-hearted? She was willing to manipulate everyone, including the authorities, just to cover her ass. I started to realize that this wasn't just about a fling anymore. It was about her lying, cheating, and absolutely destroying what we had. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed to confront her again, but this time with even more evidence. I couldn't let her spin her lies anymore. I wanted her to see I wasn't stupid or blind. I was just waiting for her to slip up. When I finally sat her down, I laid everything out. The messages, the GPS logs, the deleted chats, the photos. I told her how I'd uncovered her lies, how I knew she'd staged her disappearance, and how I'd seen her sneaking around with Jake and others. She stared at me with this angry, dismissive look, then snapped back with her usual bitchy tone. "You're psycho, Mike. You're stalking me. You're just jealous. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but I'm not some guilty wife who can't have fun." That was the moment I realized she was beyond reason. She was so used to lying and manipulating that she thought she could keep her secrets forever. I felt a deep, aching heartbreak, but also a flicker of resolve. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was okay. Every new discovery made me more convinced that I needed to make a choice, whether to fight for her or finally cut her loose. I felt the weight of her betrayal crush me. All the promises, the memories, the plans we made, all of it felt hollow now. But I also knew I had to decide what was best for me. Do I try to save what's left of this marriage, or do I finally walk away from the woman who lied and cheated so openly? The anger in my chest threatened to explode, but underneath, I felt this quiet, cold sadness. Because no matter what I decided, I'd never be able to unsee what I'd uncovered. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone else entirely. I had to face the consequences of that. The confrontation didn't end there. After laying everything out, every text, every GPS point, every secret conversation, I expected her to finally break down, to admit everything, to confess her guilt. Instead, Lisa just stared at me with that icy, bitchy smirk, as if I was the one in the wrong for catching her. Her voice was sardonic when she finally spoke. "Wow, Mike. You really went full detective mode, huh? You're so obsessed, it's pathetic. You think you're some kind of hero. I don't need to explain myself to you." That moment felt like a punch to the gut. I had laid bare the evidence and she was dismissing it all, turning it around on me. Her words cut like knives, accusations of paranoia, obsession, control. She told me I was crazy for even thinking she'd cheat, that I was overreacting and possessive. It was classic Lisa, blame shifting, gaslighting, trying to make me doubt my own perceptions. She was so good at it, I almost doubted myself for a second. But I refused to be manipulated this time. I told her I couldn't do this anymore, that I was done putting up with her lies, that I'd be leaving. Her reaction was instant. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and threw her hands up. "Fine," she snapped. "Go ahead, leave, see if I care. You're just a jealous, insecure fool anyway. You won't find anyone better, and you'll come crawling back when you realize how boring life is without me." That was the moment I saw her true colors. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd married, was nothing but a manipulative, selfish bitch. She didn't care about our marriage. She cared about her little lies, her secret meetings, her thrill of deception. I felt a surge of rage. How could she be so callous? I thought about all the times I'd defended her, all the moments I'd ignored her nitpicking, all the times I'd tried to make things work. She had been cheating for months, maybe longer, and now she was just throwing it in my face. I packed a bag that night, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I couldn't stay there in that apartment with her lying and sneering at me. I knew I needed some space to breathe, to think. I left her standing there, still smirking like she'd won something. But inside, I was shattered. Every part of me felt torn: anger, sadness, betrayal. I kept replaying the moments of her lies, her manipulations, her excuses. I felt like a fool for believing in the woman I had married. And yet I also knew I couldn't stay, not anymore. I realized how much I'd invested in this relationship, how much I'd fought for us, only to be betrayed so cruelly. As I drove away that night, I looked back at the apartment one last time. It was hard to believe I'd ever called it home. I felt a hollow emptiness inside, like part of me had died. That's when I made my decision. I was going to protect myself, whatever that meant. I'd confront the heartbreak, the anger, the confusion, and try to move on. Because there's no future with someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates. No matter how much I loved her, I knew I had to choose myself now. In the weeks that followed, I kept thinking about everything I'd uncovered. The staged rescue, her clandestine meetings, the lies she'd spun, how she'd made a fool of everyone, including me. I started to see how deeply she'd been willing to go just to get her thrill, and in some strange way, that realization was both freeing and terrifying. I learned I couldn't trust her anymore. Not a little, not at all. And that somehow I had to rebuild my life from the wreckage she left behind. The aftermath hit me harder than I expected. I moved out into a small apartment nearby, trying to keep my head above water. The first few days were the worst. Everywhere I looked, I saw her face. Her voice, her sneers, her lies replayed like a bad movie in my mind. I felt hollow, betrayed, disgusted. But at the same time, part of me was furious. Furious that she'd taken everything, my trust, my happiness, the future we'd planned, and thrown it all away for some fleeting thrill with Jake and others. I threw myself into work trying to distract myself from the mess. But even then the thoughts kept coming back, sharper each time. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it? How did I miss all those signs? Was I blind? Or just too in love to notice? I still couldn't believe the woman I'd built my life with had been lying this whole time, hiding her betrayal under layers of bullshit. It was like I'd been living with a stranger, a woman who was capable of so much deception. One thing I couldn't shake was the anger. At her, at myself, at the whole situation. I kept replaying those moments when I suspected something was wrong, those tiny clues I ignored. Every time I saw her smirk or dismiss my concerns, I felt a burn of rage. How dare she manipulate me like that? How dare she make a fool out of everyone, including the authorities, with her staged disappearance? In those quiet moments, I also felt this overwhelming sense of betrayal. I'd trusted her completely. I'd given her my heart, my future, my everything. And she'd just thrown it all away for a quick thrill, a secret rendezvous, a lie. It made me question everything, my judgment, our marriage, my own worth. Was I too blind, too naive? Or was she just a master manipulator all along? These questions haunted me every day. I knew I had to do something about it. Not just for myself, but to make sure she didn't get away with it. I started looking into the details of the rescue operation, how they found her, what the authorities knew. I wanted to see if I could find any cracks in their story, any inconsistencies. I learned that she had collaborated with the search and rescue volunteer, James, a guy I'd never met but apparently someone she'd been seeing secretly. Turns out, James was the one who found her during her staged, lost hike, and he'd even testified that she was really in trouble. That was the clincher. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her deception went. James wasn't just some volunteer. He was her lover, her confidant in this whole scheme. They'd been planning this for weeks, maybe even months. He was the one she'd called when she needed an alibi, the one she texted after they'd hooked up in those woods. And now he was involved in covering her tracks, helping her lie about being truly lost in the mountains. I felt a sick mixture of disgust and rage. How could she be so calculating, so ruthless? She used the rescue operation as a cover-up, a way to make her affair seem innocent or accidental. And she dragged an innocent volunteer into her mess, someone who believed he was helping someone in need, not covering for her cheating. That's when I knew I couldn't just walk away. I had to do something more. I started contemplating legal action, maybe exposing her to the authorities, showing them how she'd staged the whole thing. I wasn't sure if I wanted revenge or justice anymore. I just knew I couldn't let her get away with it. The thought of her lying, cheating, and manipulating everyone still made me furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had to protect myself, not just physically, but emotionally and legally too. In The end, I decided I'd gather all my evidence, confront her one last time, and then see what options I had. I owed it to myself to get answers, to hold her accountable for the damage she'd caused, because I knew her lies weren't just about infidelity. They were about betrayal on every level, and I refused to be part of that world any longer. I felt broken but also strangely stronger. This was the end of the line for us, and I had to face whatever came next. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. I had spent weeks gathering everything: her messages, GPS logs, the testimonies of the people involved, even the financial records showing how she'd financed her secret meetings. I was ready to lay it all out. I knew I'd never get the closure I needed until she faced what she'd done. One afternoon, I told her I wanted to talk. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her, but she agreed to meet at that same cafe we used to go to before everything fell apart. I sat there, my hands trembling, heart pounding. When she arrived, she immediately saw the look on my face and knew I was serious. I didn't waste time. I laid out every piece of evidence I had, watching her reaction closely. Her face twisted with irritation, then with outright fury. She spat out, "You're crazy, Mike. This is all a game to you. You're obsessive. You're jealous. You're just mad because I don't want your boring ass anymore." But I kept going, forcing her to listen as I told her how I'd uncovered her lies, her staged rescue, her affair with James, everything. Her reaction was a mix of rage and denial. She called me a stalker, a psycho, a jealous fool who was trying to ruin her life. "You think you're some kind of hero. You're just a sad little man who can't handle the truth. I did what I had to do, what I needed for myself. You're just jealous I found happiness elsewhere." I felt a deep, cold disappointment. All those years of love, of trust, had been nothing but a lie. She manipulated everyone, me, the authorities, even James, just to keep her affair hidden. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone. It was like I'd been living with a stranger, and that stranger had been lying to my face for years. Finally, I told her I was done. Done with the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I was going to expose everything, every lie, every cover-up. She screamed, cursed, called me every name in the book, but I was beyond caring. I had already made my decision. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the divorce process, and I made sure to include all the evidence I'd gathered. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions, not just for me but for how she'd betrayed everyone, including the taxpayers who'd unknowingly paid for her deception. I knew she'd try to spin her story, but I also knew the truth was out now. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that you can't control others' choices, only how you respond to them. I'm still healing, still trying to rebuild my life, but I know I won't let her lies define me. I'm stronger now, more cautious. But I'm also more aware that some people are just not worth the pain they cause. So, if there's anything I want to tell anyone reading this, especially those who have been betrayed like I was, it's this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and never be afraid to walk away from someone who's not worth your pain. Because in the end, your happiness matters more than their lies, and you deserve better.